Good day. My name is Steve Bernstein. I'm one of the founders and principal consultant here at Waypoint Group. We're an advisory and consulting firm, been around for about 5.5 years, focusing on helping B2B firms acquire trustworthy feedback that becomes actionable to drive the right improvements that will ultimately accelerate profitable growth. We're a proud Net Promoter Loyalty partner. We're also proud to have been recognized by the Temkin Group's Vendor of the Year Award with judging by the CXPA members. And the net is we've been around quite a lot and had the opportunity to see what works well with Net Promoter and actually some of the issues with it as well. Now, I won't be going through all the detail around Net Promoter. There's been quite a lot written on the topic. Suffice it to say that the fundamental interest and excitement around Net Promoter was this statement you see on the screen, that there's this connection between how people rate a particular company and then longitudinally, right, watching what the actual behaviors of those same participants have been over time, and found that this idea of the recommend question to be extremely predictive of what customers actually do and can be a key part of accelerating profitable growth. Now, know, however, though, that the research around Net Promoter was conducted in consumer industries. If you look at the back of the book, and I was a proud participant in a lot of Net Promoter programs over the last 12 years since Fred Reichheld initially published that paper, you'll see that the industries that were tracked, measured, and monitored through this process were consumer industries, because that's frankly where the data was. In B2B, however, things are different. Let's explain. Now, you know from your research and from working with Net Promoter that fundamentally is based on this idea of how likely would you be to recommend the company to friends and colleagues, and you've got this scale of 0 to 10. Conventional wisdom at the time was that 5s and 6s were thought to be neutrals. But with Net Promoter and the research we did, really found that actually 5s and 6s were not neutral at all. In fact, if somebody's kind of giving you a 5 or a 6, then you recognize that, you know, they're probably not really somebody that is likely to recommend. And it's that positive kind of vehement word of mouth that is really exciting, that drives that accelerated word of mouth and accelerated profitable growth. That was kind of the sentiment at the time, and with Net Promoter, we just fundamentally basically break the customer base into really two fundamental groups. There are those that are essentially with you, that rate you high on the scale, and there are those that are not with you, right, that probably are rating you somewhat differently. And the way this broke down in the Net Promoter world was essentially promoters on the right-hand side, rating you a 9 or a 10. There were detractors, rating you at a 0 to 6. And then there's passives, right? Kind of in the swing vote, if you will, right? The people that are in the middle, that are rating you a 7 or 8 on this scale, that really could probably fall in either direction. Now, what's missing from this equation, and what's very important in B2B, is a fourth segment. That fourth group are the non-responders, or what we actually call the disengaged. The programs that we help our B2B clients with are fundamentally designed to make sure we're capturing the right information from the right people at the right time. The communications aspect of this is extremely important. We want to make sure that we give those respondents a clear what's in it for me, right, that explains why they should respond to this survey. And with those kind of recruiting tactics, we found that if somebody still won't respond, it does indicate a measure of engagement that actually can be very predictive of future growth. Let me explain. This is a data set from a live client. We see this kind of result over and over and over again, sometimes with slightly different higher numbers, sometimes with slightly lower numbers. But what we see here in this example is this idea that a company sends out their Net Promoter surveys, gets some results back, and you can see on the screen here their perceived Net Promoter score essentially was an extremely high, 68%. In fact, they came to Waypoint Group with the question of, how do we activate all these promoters? What should we be doing with this incredible asset? And that's definitely an excellent question and something that we're able to help them with. But underlying this is the idea of trying to understand how representative the data might be about their business overall. Is this truly the picture of what's going on in the health of the business? And then to do that, we looked at the financials for the accounts that were invited and responding. And what we found actually was, of the people that were sent these surveys, the first step was looking at the response rate. We see that actually there was only a 21% response rate, which meant that there was 79% of the business was not responding and essentially was a blind spot. Now, in many businesses, especially in consumer, where you don't have much choice in the matter because you're not going to be able to survey millions of consumers, but in B2B, census can be very important, especially for your most strategic top accounts. And this idea that 79% of the business is not representative had us scratching our heads. And so when we looked a little bit further and looked at the financials for these customers, we found actually that overall the renewal rate for this SaaS-based software as a service company was a little bit over 80%. So they definitely had some room to improve on their overall retention and managing down attrition. But when we looked a little bit further, we found the renewal rate for people responding actually was close to 100%. Right? A 96.7% as you see on the screen here. However, the renewal rate for the accounts that were silent, those accounts that didn't respond, was significantly lower. In fact, when you kind of look at this as, in the inverse, there was a 7x greater likelihood for accounts to churn if they didn't respond. In other words, if I received a survey with all the appropriate recruiting communications and still wouldn't respond to this client survey, then I was 7 times more likely to churn than if I did respond. And that sort of finding is what we see over and over and over again. And the most interesting thing here too is that the renewal rate for those responders, again, almost 100%, clearly showed their head in the game, and that was regardless of whether that responder was a promoter, passive, or detractor, or I should say, whether the account had a positive, neutral, or negative net promoter score overall at that account level. So the important thing to think about then is not just a matter of what's my score overall and what can I do to really move the needle with those accounts and improve my score. The key thing to really think about is for those high-scoring accounts, yes, you need to activate them. There's clearly a strategy that needs to be in place to be able to take advantage of those accounts and make sure that they are giving you the gift of that promotion, of that word of mouth. Activate them. In B2B, not liable to happen on its own. Passives, on the other hand, need to be engaged. As I said before, they're the swing vote. They can move one way or another. We want to engage them so that they vote positive, essentially, right, and move up to become those promoters that can be activated and give back to the business. Detractors clearly need to be converted, right? These are people that are unhappy, but really, it's a cry for help. They are still with you. They responded. Their head's in the game. They are trying to seek some assistance. Maybe they have an unresolved issue that could be addressed in some way. Not necessarily solved at the root cause, but clearly there's got to be a way to address their feedback. And then finally, those disengaged, that fourth critical segment, the people who are not responding, you must prove to them that you do care, that you are listening, that you are looking for improvement. The most critical aspect of that is what we call demonstrated listening. Going back to everybody that's been invited for feedback, which really should be all your customers over the course of a year, and make sure that they know not only that you're listening, but that you've taken action based on what they're saying. And when you put it all together, right, there's really these actions that need to be taken both kind of at the one-to-one level and one-to-many. And I think the orange here is a great way to illustrate this. At the one-to-one level, which means individual accounts, individual customers, right, working with that particular customer. Now maybe this is a strategic account and it's driving a significant piece of revenue. We need to make sure at the one-to-one level that we're acquiring the right information from that account, right, from the right people at the right time. There's a number of tactics that we would want to employ to drive up those response rates and make sure that the response is representative of the business with that account. If you've got 5 people at that account that are really involved in renewal decisions, then feedback from those 5 people is probably pretty important to acquire. And finally, at the one-to-one level, the survey process gives you an opportunity really to engage your customers, right? It gives you an opportunity to help them be successful without necessarily looking to try to sell them something. This is about mutual customer success, or mutual success for both you and the customer, and this is an opportunity really to engage them around the improvement process that you're looking to undertake with your Net Promoter Program. Now, when you bubble that up and you look for patterns across the account, we kind of focus on this one-to-many level. And as you get trustworthy data, as you make sure that at the individual account level that it's representing your business and that you're hearing from the people that you need to be hearing from, you're able to take on effective processes that really help scale your improvement initiatives. There's a lot that the front line can do to address and work towards customer experience improvements, but doing this more scalably, right, with the right back office improvements, the right product improvements, right operational improvements, those need to be prioritized because those tend to be bigger bets with larger investments. You want to make sure you're doing it effectively. Get to the root cause. Understand what's really driving this consistent pattern across these accounts and nip it right where it needs to be improved. And with that scalability, then you can focus on the ROI, right? What growth is resulting from an increase in promoters that you're in turn able to activate. Now, of course, holding all this together is the skin, the peel, right? Which is effective governance, right? Having good oversight into how the program is working, making sure account teams are engaged, making sure that the company overall is looking after, again, both the one-to-one level and the one-to-many level are key factors in making sure you're both acquiring trustworthy data and also making sure that you're driving the right actions based on your investment in the program. Now, that's all I have time for today. I would love to hear from you. My contact information is up on the screen, and you can find a heck of a lot more information up on our blog as well. And please let me know if there's any questions or comments that you might have with regards to this process or any other with regards to Net Promoter. Until then, talk to you soon.